Hi, this is a recording of the best man speech that I wrote for Paul and Becca's wedding on the 4th of August 2012. My name's Lee. I'm Paul's brother and of course his best man. And as you can see, the speech is a little bit unconventional. The reason for that is, for the last 5 years I've been working as a lecturer, so I'm not going to have any problem talking in front of a big room full of people, but I will need to have a PowerPoint presentation alongside me. It's a huge honour to be Paul's best man on such a special occasion. And I was absolutely delighted when he asked me. But then I got thinking. And to be honest, it was probably the least he could do. Because most of you won't know this, but I'm largely responsible for Paul being here in the first place. And to explain why that's the case, I feel as though we must go back to the very beginning and examine carefully the life and times of Paul Francis Rowlandson. In the beginning, there was our mum and dad. They got married in 1976, and in 1979, they had me. And for 6.5 years, I was an only child. And it was absolutely brilliant. I got spoilt rotten. Look how many toys I used to get at Christmas. Christmas 1984. I remember that Christmas well. We just moved into our new house and money was a little bit tight, but my mum and dad saved up every penny they had to get me every He-Man figure they could possibly get their hands on. Should have been the happiest kid in Wigan. But apparently, when they asked me whether Father Christmas had brought me everything I wanted that year, I said, not everything. What I really would have liked for Christmas was a little brother. Well, how can you turn down a request like that? So just over a year later, I had my wish. And on the 18th of May, 1986, Paul was born. And from that point on, there would be 2 stockings for Father Christmas to fill in our house at Christmas, and it would never quite be the same again. I think my mum and dad were probably relieved that Paul never got to a stage where he wanted a younger brother or sister for Christmas too. Otherwise, of course, one of us would have had to share a room. What I really love about these pictures here is you'll notice we always stand the same way around as well. A little bit like Ant and Dec. Of course, the best thing about being an older brother though is that I've been able to be there throughout all of Paul's life to share all of his moments. I've been there for all the highs and all the lows. In fact, you could say that I've seen it all. So growing up, Paul was very much part of your average family. There was my dad, my mum, myself and Paul. And we used to do all the things that your average family likes to do. So every year we'd go away together on holiday. Some years to Pontins, other years to Cornwall. But probably the best holiday that we went on was when we went to Florida. Apart from the fact that Paul screamed the whole 10-hour flight because his ears were popping. But other than that, I think it's fair to say that we both enjoyed that holiday, especially Paul, who was just the right age, so really brought into the whole Disneyland experience. But our final family holiday together was in Canada, where we stayed with Clet and Ray. That was a good holiday. We went everywhere with them that 2 weeks, driving around in their camper van, visiting different places. Clet and Ray had 2 children themselves, similar age to Paul, Julianne and Danny. And as you can see, they also had a dog called Sparky. That was a bit of a problem for Paul because he's always suffered really badly from pet allergies. So all he wanted to do all fortnight was play with the dog, but sadly he couldn't. In fact, even if he wanted to just stroke the dog, he had to wear a big massive glove so he wouldn't have a reaction. It was either that or take antihistamine tablets, but to be honest, they did tend to give him a little bit of a strange reaction. Before we knew it, Paul was a teenager and had started St Edmund Arrowsmith High School with his good friends Bean, Paul Harding and OB. Apparently in school, Paul was a model pupil always did his homework, always well behaved, which is why it was a big shock when one day a teacher called Mrs. Sim came into Paul's class and announced to everyone that he was in big trouble. Apparently, when Paul had handed his history homework in, his teacher had spotted that someone had written the words "Mrs. Sim stinks" on the back page. I don't know who could have possibly played a mean trick like that. But it's fair to say Paul never did ask me to help him with his homework again. Unfortunately, the teachers assumed that Paul must have wrote it himself. And as we know, school teachers don't have a sense of humour. So Paul found himself the following evening on detention. And let's be honest, no one wants to end up on detention, especially not with a teacher that stinks. But don't worry, Paul knew exactly who was to blame and he was already planning his revenge. A couple of weeks later, I received a phone call. "Hello, is that Lee Rowlandson? Hi, we're the production team for a children's BBC show called Get Your Own Back. We received a letter from your younger brother Paul, and he told us how you got him in trouble with his history teacher, and we all thought it was a good story, so we'd like you to come on the show." Now, for anyone who's never seen Get Your Own Back, it was on in the late 90s and it involved kids basically getting their own back on adults by making them play embarrassing games and ultimately getting a chance to gunge them. Sadly, when I checked my diary, it turned out I was busy on the day that they wanted us to film. Unfortunately, I couldn't do it. Just one of those things, I guess. But before we knew it, Paul's high school days had come to a close. And strangely enough, he managed to stay out of trouble for the next couple of years.